Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you're watching this transmission. 'Tis I, Mike Martins. It's 33 degrees Celsius here. I am sweating, but I gotta get this story out to you guys. It is very important. I got my friend, my undercover boots on the ground in Australia that understands or knows what's going on. We're gonna discuss this money laundering situation. I called it weeks ago. Didn't I call this weeks ago? Please say something.
I do remember you calling it. You saying there's all these articles about money laundering in Canada and the economy would be in recession if it wasn't for the money laundering in Canada. And Mikey's going, what about Australia? No one's talking about it in Australia. And I thought, that's true.
And do you know
Nobody is talking about it in Australia.
Do you remember the specific story I brought up about it, saying, I wonder if this organized criminal sat down at a meeting one day and said, let's just put the money laundering in Canada. Australia seems too risky for us. I don't think that happened. I think anywhere they could park their money, I think they laundered it.
Yeah, and I even heard another theory that is quite more sinister, which might be more of a Mike in the Night rabbit hole, but it was around the idea that if a country wanted to bring another economy down, then creating a property bubble would be a fabulous way to go about that. So
yes. Definitely is. Especially when the government props up the things and the government's on the, it's more of a, we can't have this crash. Rates are too low. We can't raise rates. We've created these fake asset bubbles. What do we do now, right? Yep. Okay, so, all right, I've received several money laundering things and people messaging me saying, mate, you called it. I got like 6 messages today when I arrived to my house saying, mate, you called it. There's money laundering in Australia. It's like, what do you honestly think? A lot of these criminals are going to sit back and say, okay, Canada's going to get the money laundering and fentanyl. Western United States is going to get only just the fentanyl and the fake marijuana, synthetic marijuana. And then we're going to do for Australia, it's going to be something special for them. No, they don't do that. So basically, okay, now I have it open here. AFP gains properties worth $4.2 million from Chinese national over money laundering. 4.2 million. Guys, I'm going to predict, okay? You're hearing it now first. I called the money laundering out first. Now, I'm going to call how much is going to be in Australia. Are you ready for this? I am calling $100 billion.
That's how much you think has been money laundered?
I know.
It'll be interesting to see because, I mean, how can they even really measure that? Who's tracking it?
Well, here goes. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
This is from last week, 3 weeks ago. On May 9th, an expert panel of money laundering issues is reported. Combating money laundering in British Columbia real estate, in which estimated 2018 money laundering in Canada, $46.7 billion in recent CD. How Institute reported why we failed to catch the money launderers, 99.9%. I estimate money laundering in Canada is 100 to 130 billion right now.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking in Australia, okay, let's be more conservative, 80 to 105 billion dollars laundered through Australia.
80
to 100.
So 80 billion
to 130. Right here in Canada, this is money laundered through BC real estate. Is
this through real estate? You're talking about 80 billion in real estate, Mike.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Yes, because here in British Columbia, on this article here, it says, we failed to catch money laundering. It says, 2018 money laundering in Canada is 46.7 billion. Okay? Then the Institute went through other avenues and said it's 100 to 130 billion, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking in Australia, total as a whole, 80 billion to 105 billion laundered.
So if 80 billion got money laundered and say the average property they were buying was $1 million, which is probably on the low side.
Right.
What does that mean in terms of number of properties? What's that, like 8,000 or is that 80,000? I'm trying to move the...
It would be 80,000, but hold on. Let's take one step back. Shadow flipping.
So the same property multiple times.
Exactly. So me and you own a property in Australia, in Sydney. I sell you the property for $1 million. You sell it back for 1.1. I sell it back to you 1.1. You sell it back to me 1.15. You sell it back, and we're both selling the same property back and forth towards each other.
Right. Gotcha.
And we're both cleaning money in the banks.
Right.
Through legal
transactions. And I
transactions.
actually think it's been happening. it's been happening with much more expensive properties and driving up the high end of the market so that there are fewer actual transactions as well.
Yeah, yeah. But I am thinking that it's going to be in and around 80 billion to 105 billion in Australia. That's what I'm calling for. What do you think?
I don't really want to weigh in about the number because like it gets to the point where the number's so big they just blow my mind. What I'm really interested in is the story that came up on ABC The Business where they were talking about the real estate agents, the lawyers, and the accountants. So all these three professions that facilitate the real estate deals that enable the money laundering to occur.
That's correct.
How they should have a duty of responsibility. And as you know, Mike, I work in financial planning. We've had an anti-money laundering rules in this area of financial planning and financial services for a long time. I'm thinking 10 years, around about 10 years. So what that means is when a client invests money, we have an obligation to ask them where it came from, where the money came from, and we have an obligation to report if we think that it might not be true.
Right.
Okay.
Of course, right.
So
that's like
apparently with real estate and lawyers and accountants, they don't carry that same responsibility according to this story on ABC. And what interested me was that the real estate agents were like, yay, we're happy to do it. I mean, that's going to affect their sales. But apparently they were all like, yay, we're happy to do it. But the lawyer was like, straight face, no messing around. Hey, that would seriously impact the client lawyer relationship. And I was like, yeah, it would, because you're facilitating crime and you might have to stop that. Anyway, that's what I'm more interested in than the number, to be honest. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with your number predictions as well.
Okay, my question is now second part of the question. Would Australia be in a recession today if it wasn't for criminals, money laundering? Because
I cannot answer that question, Mikey, because in my opinion, Australia is in a recession. So I can't say that it would be. I mean, officially it would be, but it is anyways, right? Okay,
right.
That's my opinion.
But it would be more blatant right now if it wasn't for
would be.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to hide that in the numbers the way that they are.
Okay. Because right now, as we speak, if it wasn't for that $100 and something billion laundered through Canadian casinos and money laundering through real estate, we'd be in a lot of trouble right now, Canada. We'd be in a very big recession. Mind you, our population is almost homeless or a paycheck away from being homeless. So that's the problem with the Canadian proper right now, suffering big time, and they're working two jobs, some people.
Do you know what makes me so sad, Mike? And, I know you talk a lot about supply and demand. What makes me so sad is that properties are sitting vacant while people are homeless. What makes me sad is that developers won't reduce their price. I mean, I saw an interview with the billionaire property developer, and he was basically saying he's reducing his prices like 10% at the moment. So that's not going to be enough for the average person to afford them anyway.
Yeah.
And he was just laughing and saying now that the liberals are back in power and it'll all be good and interest rates are going to go down and it'll all be good and I'll be able to like cancel my 10% discount. But, there are people that are nowhere near being able to afford property.
A basic homestead, nothing severe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting pretty bad. So Canada's in a lot of trouble. So Canada, we are looking now, and we are actually breaking down numbers, and actually have they're estimating 100 to 130 billion. And when they estimate, they always be very conservative with their numbers and lowball it all the time. And the hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, that were laundered just through casinos. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
So what are you projecting the housing market in the big major cities there in Australia? What are you projecting in the next quarter?
No, I don't make predictions like that, but I just think it's going to continue to slide.
Well, you just made a prediction, hilarious. My friend.
Yeah, but I'm not going to give you a percent because there's so many. The market is not a free market. It's
Right.
clearly very tampered with.
Yeah.
But I'm of the opinion that it's just going to keep going down because there's no reason for it to go up. I mean, there was all this post-election euphoria where people are like, the liberals are in power again.
Okay.
So it's all good. And I'm like, hello, people. Do you realize nothing has changed?
Nope. Not a damn
And there's
thing.
the Financial Review, I think it was the Australian Financial Review posted an article on the weekend or late last week that said post-election euphoria is waning. And I'm like, already? That was quick.
Yep.
You know, it was just a bunch of just smoke and mirrors, and people are already seeing quite through it. And yeah, it's just going to keep going down. It has to.
Well, if you look at historical, I'm comparing Sydney and Melbourne to Perth numbers. So Perth had 12 to 16 quarter retraction since its boom. I think Sydney needs about anywhere from 12 to 16 quarter retraction to come back to Earth. Perth had that mining boom. And if you look at the retraction from, I think it was 2010 or 11 when they start retracting, you'll start to see what I'm talking about, how it went continuously for about 16 to 18 quarters of retraction. I think Sydney and Melbourne needs about 16 fake quarters of fake wealth that was fakely grown on a fake bubble, on a bubble every fake quarter to come back down to Earth. And once they get that, they'll be back to where they should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. But with this whole supply and demand, it'll get drawn out to the extent that people just refuse to sell. Like that the vendors hang on to their imaginary value of their properties and just won't sell. And that draws it out, you know, which is a good, I guess, because it would shock the economy too much to happen all at once, really drastically. So I'm kind of in favor of a long, drawn-out correction rather than a quick one. But in the meantime, what it's meaning is that volumes are so low, state governments aren't getting any tax. And I know you talk a lot about tax and how they're, you know, the Victorian government just came out with 10 new taxes or something to try to make up for their lost stamp duty. And it's, in my opinion, is not going to come close because they're losing a lot of stamp duty. So...
yeah, a lot of stamp duty. In Canada, what do? They raise property tax. When they raise property tax, they start shutting down all the private sector jobs. And once the private sector jobs can't no longer pay their employees because taxes and stamp duty is too high, guess what? They just close their doors.
Yeah, I just had a friend resign from working in an area of the public sector that she described as toxic. Her words, not mine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's getting ugly.
It is getting ugly, and people are going to fight tooth and nail to keep their jobs. They're going to do what they can do and basically stay in their positions.
Yeah, but Mike, can I ask you something?
Sure.
And you can, if you hate this, cut this part out of the video.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am really curious about the idea of, I know you talk a lot about how people can help themselves in terms of, you know, making smart decisions.
Right.
But what about how we can help ourselves in terms of like our outlook and our emotion, how we handle our emotions around all of this that's going on? You know, I really think like this stuff is scary and we need to be prepared to handle it. And we're going to see, you know, I think my prediction, and it's not a happy prediction, is that it's going to become kind of mainstream normal in Australia the way it became so in the US, that like foreclosures are just like a thing that happens. It's like, you know, like 1 in 10 people get foreclosed on, no big deal. You know, it's just a thing that happens that we go through in our lives, where that's not a thing. That's not, I don't think I know a single person. I know one person who got foreclosed on, and the only reason I know is because she went to Canberra to make a statement against the bank that foreclosed, and it was an investment property situation. I don't know if it was her own house, but anyways, where I'm going with this is, how do we handle this new normal that becomes, you know, this kind of economic sort of scariness, for lack of a better word.
Okay, well, it's a psychological thing, right? People were psyched into buy, and people need to be psyched into understanding and come to grips to take a loss. It's a different euphoria. It's one you don't want to wish on your worst enemy, but it's something that people need to come to grips with, and they're going to have to. The Australian helpline for over debtors or overly debted people is going off the hook right now. I have a friend that works there, and he tells me it's out of control there. The amount of calls they get of people threatening suicide or threatening this or threatening that, or can't make ends meet or don't know what to do, are in a lot of trouble. And they're helping as much as possible and helping people properly prepare for bankruptcy and stuff like that. There's a lot that's going on behind the scenes, and there's a lot of stress, duress, and the only thing I could recommend, the best thing to recommend, is for people to learn from their mistakes, to never make the same mistake again. And like I said, you need to do your own research. Do not go into a brokerage or a bank or a lender or a real estate firm expecting them to help you. You have to help yourself and do your own research. If I had hair and went to a barber, I would put my faith in his hands and give him $20 and cut my hair, because I can't cut hair. But you can't have the barber mentality when you go to see a broker or when you go to a bank or when you go to a real estate firm. They're out to make their commission. We should be educated and armed with knowledge and have already pulled our comparables, know where our total debt service ratio is, how much we could afford without going over, how much could we afford, and how much could we pay back in X amount of years. People need to arm themselves with that information, because banks won't do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that okay?
And it is okay. And I would add to that, maybe learning from our mistakes is that, it's not the end of the story. What was that thing? It's a bit cheesy, but what was that thing the guy said in The Best Majestic Hotel? Do you remember that movie? He would say, if it all is good in the end, and if it's not good, it's not yet the end, because
That's right.
It is a cycle. This is not forever.
But this is vicious, because it is
a cycle.
Instead of leaving our economy or letting our economy or markets on autopilot, our governments went in and tinkered with things and made it even worse. And now it's the middle working class or the working poor or the people that didn't even sign up for this mess are going to have to pay it back later.
But we're not completely victims of the economy, Like some businesses thrive when an economy is shrinking.
Right.
Some businesses still do well. And so there is money to be made, and there are jobs to be had, and maybe we have to get more creative about how we do that. But, the economy growing less doesn't mean it's not growing at all, and it doesn't mean there isn't money changing hands,
But the main question is, how much of it is laundered? How much of it is, how much of that economy is pent up economy? That's the main question we need to ask. Pent up economy, I've been telling everyone who's got the cojones to come forward and tell people about Australia and the money laundering situation there. Come on, let's do this. You know what I'm saying?
I don't have any inside information, obviously.
But I'm saying in my videos before, I kept saying, because I kept saying,
I'd like to see more about what's been going on.
Yeah, for sure.
Who's got the cojones to talk more about it?
Yeah, who's got more cojones to talk about this? Well, it's really hot here. It's like 32 Celsius here. But
yeah, you've been wearing like sleeveless tops. I'm sitting by a heater over here in Australia, okay?
Yeah, it's very hot here. It's like about 32 Celsius centigrade here, but it's like a very muggy, strong sun outside today, so.
Well, enjoy it.
Yes, I will. Well, that's it. So you heard my predictions, and who was the first person on the scene for years now talking about the Australian housing disaster?
I don't know. You're one of the first I noticed.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes. Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. I've been on the scene for years. And did you hear they've deleted so many of my Australia videos?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Even if I'm wrong or I'm a loony, why would they delete them on me for?
I think we might know the answer, but are we going to say it?
All right. Well, it was an absolute pleasure to speak to you. And if you have any more anything you want to add, tomorrow is Mike in the Night. So if you want to be in the show or part of the show, just let me know and give us an aspect or a perspective on what's happening with Australia.
Yeah, tomorrow's trends in the housing market, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you
Beautiful,
so much
Mikey.
for your
Take
time.
care.
Take care.
You too. Bye.